This is the Authentic Change Podcast, and I am Mike Horne. Authenticity reflects what we want from each other and our organizations: open communication, trust, community, fun, and opportunity. I want to help you to do your best in your personal and professional relationships. This podcast delivers expertise, insights, and approaches on authentic leadership, to live your purpose, to lead from your values, to establish connected relationships, to steward people and culture change, to build and sustain prosperity, and to open doors and possibilities. This podcast will assist you in paving the way forward to personal, team, and organizational prosperity. Welcome to another edition of Authentic Change with Mike Horne. And I am just completely honored and delighted today to have as a guest on Authentic Change, Ronda Robinson. She is a master performance consultant and the creator of Practical Empathy. And as I saw that and began to watch and observe some of Ronda's work, that really caught my eye, and I think it'll resonate with everyone in today's listening audience. And she is also the founder of the legendary Leaders Club. And I can't wait to dig into all of that with Ronda as we explore the topics of integrity and authenticity and working and leading in today's world. Ronda, welcome to Authentic Change. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show, by the way. This is very exciting. So a little bit about me. I've been in corporate leadership for, about 30 years, let's say. And it's quite obvious that things have changed over that time. Where I really found a passion, though, was in the training and development field. And that's where I really honed my expertise and spent a focus on not only just from a sense of work, but also how can we improve, which has led me to you today.
It's interesting. I love what you say about how we can work and how we can improve. And wasn't that the embodiment, I think, of so much of the learning and development or training and development work that went on in many organizations at a time? Is this, let's focus on how we work and how we improve. Where do you see that today?
There's still lots of ways that we can improve.
Right.
When you do some of these style assessments and so forth, I always come out as two things: a pioneer and a teacher. And so I'm always hungry for what can we do better? What can we do more? And I think the awesome opportunity is right now is there's so much content out there organically, YouTube, courses, masterclass, mastermind, podcasts, that for those who want to improve, those who want to learn, can find almost anything at their fingertips today.
And that is a change that you've probably experienced and continue to experience in your career and learning and development and leading leaders.
Absolutely. Everything was paper-based before. It either came in a box of binders, a book, or you bought it somewhere.
And we created 3-ring binder heavens, 3 inches, 5 inches.
We used to call it Bob, the box of binders.
All right. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. I hadn't heard that expression before, Ronda. What I'm curious about, though, is what you're doing in the legendary Leaders Club. But before we get to that, what I'd love to hear about is the empathy portion of your work. And let's relate that to the other important topics of leadership and authenticity and authentic leadership, in other words, and also the topic of integrity and how it enters authentic leadership. But let's talk about empathy.
So, Mike, you're going to be thrilled that everything you just said is all related. All related. So empathy, why do I have a passion now for empathy? for the same reason why I got a passion for training, I found a passion for training when I didn't get good training. I realized how important it was. And I've had a couple of experiences in my work life where I could see all around me the devastation, the carnage, and sometimes scorched earth. That lack of empathy was imposing on really good employees. And I've also felt the other side, though, when you have empathetic leaders and all the difference it can make. And independent of me, Rhonda's opinions, there is quite a body of research and survey information coming out noting that empathy from leadership is the most critical driver of overall performance, and it is the skill that distinguishes great leaders from average ones. So I've just turned that around to be legendary leaders versus average leaders.
Wonderful. And can you provide some examples of empathic leadership or empathetic leaders?
I boil it down to, is your team aware that you care? And how do you show it? If I can just give you a little background, some people probably think I might be your, especially as a woman, the touchy-feely leader type. Quite frankly, I'm not. I'm not a feely type of person. I'm not a feely type of leader. And through my own journey, I've had to figure out how to make people aware that I care. Like if someone I love is feeling ill, I'm not the type of person to hold their hand and put a washcloth on their head, but I will make soup and I'll go get your prescriptions filled. That's how I show up and serve. And so that's kind of the idea behind practical empathy, is for people who aren't naturally empathetic, showing their feelings on an outward side. How can you still make people aware that you care, maintain your own style, and still not drain your time and your energy?
Right. You make me think of Marshall Goldsmith, best-selling author. He describes himself, I think, as the world's #1 coach, or maybe some others have described him as that. Mm-hmm. I was lucky that Marshall endorsed my recent book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically. And as you described the work that you're doing and leading and helping others in terms of empathy, you reminded me of what Marshall has said, is that maybe only two things, and he didn't quite say it this way, but two things are important. One is that you have to show that you care. And two, you have to do the work.
Yes.
And yes, maybe that's, what much of this, can be capsulized in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? How do you help leaders to show that they care? As I would imagine that might be some of the work of the Legendary Leaders Club.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. So the Legendary Leaders Club is a movement of empathetic leaders. It's where we have a community to learn how to be more empathetic, and practical empathy. This program that I have is a big cornerstone of that. But also scenarios and how we can be more empathetic as leaders, again, by maintaining your authenticity and not draining your time and energy. So what does that look like? There's a lot of, or the growing work that's out there teaching leaders how to be more empathetic usually steps back on the one-on-one interactions. Look someone in the eye, nod, listen, some physical gestures that you can do.
Active listening techniques.
Yes, active listening. Maybe even some ways that you can say things. What we focus on are, what do you look for in your team and in your organization and individuals, that you can spot these triggers that could lead to a situation or are in a situation that require empathy, because not everything does. Somebody lost their favorite pen. Okay, they're sad about that. But as an organizational leader who has priorities and goals that need to be met, where can I make an impact? And so practical empathy focuses on 5 triggers of emotions that drive people's behavior at work. And so if you can spot these 5 triggers, I've learned to even get ahead of it. I can predict when a circumstance is going to trigger someone and is going to require empathy. So I get ahead of it. I'm already aware of it because I can see it now. And then I can act on it before it becomes an issue.
Well, I'm hooked now. You've got to tell me about the 5 triggers.
Sure. So these triggers actually come from behavioral neuroscience research that was first published in 2008 and refreshed again in 2012. So it's not Ronda making it up. And the model spells SCARF. So it's status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness,
David
and fairness.
Roth.
Yes, David Roth. It's exactly. The Neuro Leadership Institute is where this comes from. And there are other applications of the SCARF model. This is unique to applying it to empathy. And it's all about minimizing social threats and bringing it at least back to neutral, if not even making it a reward, and bringing people into a forward state of mental awareness and engagement.
It's a very useful, practical, helpful way in which to understand the role of empathy in personal change.
Yes. So, for example, when I do often, these types of programs, and we focus on an example employee named John. And in a simple scenario, which happens every day, John's worked for his boss for 10 years. They have a great working relationship. John is a solid worker, good employee. But one day out of the blue for him, it's announced that his boss has been promoted and they're bringing in someone from outside the organization to replace his boss. And
surprise, yes.
Surprise. Most people would expect that there would be some reaction and so forth. But I don't know that leaders are translating that to the bottom line. John kind of sucks it up, and maybe on a day-to-day basis, it seems like he's still, nothing's wrong. But in his mind, he is furious that no one even asked him if he could apply for this promotion and was overlooked. And so what does he do? He starts to retreat. And he's putting forth less effort. Even when he's in his seat doing work, his mind is elsewhere. He's ruminating over, why didn't anyone ask me? Am I not good enough? This isn't fair. I didn't get a chance. And I'm mad that someone from the outside of the organization, when I know my work well, is taking my job that I could have had. So all of that time spent thinking about the issue is taking time away from actually getting work done. And that's just one status threat, or we call it being in the red on status, where it's taking time away from work and he could be more productive.
Right. And as we think about this, to me, it's much of the same or a similar argument that I lose, is that when we can't bring our whole self to work, we end up leaving so much on the table.
Bingo. And where we find that, yes, practical empathy can make an impact in these one-on-one interactions, where it has the most impact on the bottom line is when you can spot these triggers organizationally, or at least within business units and teams. So what do we mean by that? Let's say that there is a plan for an organizational change. You're going to change your organizational structure. By thinking about these 5 triggers, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, you can get ahead of it ahead of time, before it even happens, before it's announced. How are you going to handle job title changes or reporting structure changes where, let's say, someone was reporting to the leader of their business unit, but because the business unit got bigger, now they're third down in line. They may feel that sting. So get ahead of those things and address them. Certainty. What's the communication plan? How can you make people, it's basic, change management, get people thinking ahead, seeing what the next steps are so they have certainty. That is off of their brain and they can focus on the work. autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, that all falls in line with something like a big organizational change, especially if it is an acquisition or a merger. If it's within your own community, that's one thing. But if it's bigger, including people who are unknown to your team, that can have a dramatic threat response for your organization.
You can cover a variety of circumstances in this regard then, because there's so many changes that occur and impact organizations. So understanding this practical empathy is a way to address and bring value to so many different situations that can occur.
It is. And, as leaders, we're busy. We're working, we're maxing it out every day, right? Weekends, evenings sometimes. And being empathetic is not always top of mind. But keep in mind, leaders don't lead spreadsheets and buildings. They lead people. And part of the Legendary Leaders Club is trying to make a mind shift of always thinking people first. People first. So if you do people and empathy first, now your impact on the spreadsheets, the building, the output, and the results will be amplified because you've got more people working towards those goals.
Yeah, that is what's really terrific, right? When you can create that alignment. And that's how I think about authenticity in many respects. This word I haven't used, alignment, but because it is of a different flavor than congruency, which is usually how I describe authenticity. It's the congruency between my thoughts and my actions, or my words and my actions. It's when I have alignment of my attitudes, my behaviors, my cognitions, when they're congruent. And generally, if those things are congruent, then the result is happiness. And what's clear to me is that people enjoy working with and for happy people. And that creates all of the results that you so well describe in terms of knowing when and knowing how to be empathic with others, as if there isn't any time, but really taking the time to understand it and when to demonstrate its extraordinary value in perhaps trying or challenging situations. Is that right, Rhonda? Is that how you would see it?
You nailed it, Mike. You nailed it.
Thank you.
And I think that's also where leaders get tripped up with empathy, is they do care. I firmly believe that the majority of leaders, they do care about their people. They just don't know how to show it in a way that remains authentic to their style. Like I told you, my style is not outwardly what you would think of as an empathetic person. So staying authentic to myself, I can now take actions, tangible actions that show people that I care. You see a lot of leaders who are trying, but they're kind of missing the mark because it's not as a relatable action as they could take. For example, let's say your team put in a lot of work to meet a milestone, and you think you're rewarding them by bringing them pizza on Friday. Well, for all the extra hours and the sweat and tears that team went in, they could be thinking that is a token little gesture. You're trying to be empathetic to the other hours. You're trying to reward them, for their extra effort, but it just doesn't come across well.
Right. And for many, where the work world is changing and shifting to, working remotely,
yes,
it's more important for leaders to lean in to the conversation. Rhonda, I'm wondering, what are some of the words you hear others or perhaps some of your clients say when they describe authenticity?
For authenticity, I think that a lot of leaders struggle with that. And my next statement will say what I think is in their head, not versus what they would say about it. But I think the first step is leaders need to get authentic with themselves. do they know themselves, and are they confident in how they know themselves to be able to show up authentically? So I'll take you back to myself. I told you I'm not a touchy-feely person, but I knew that I was supposed to show that I care. And so I kind of tried to be that way, and it just came off icky. It just came off icky. When I made peace with that about myself, it's like, that's just not me. Now I can find something that fits my style, and I have. I think leaders do that as well. With authenticity, I think they struggle with what others expect them to be, the future self that they want to be versus how they really are, and spending some time reconciling those three things. I think then they're prepared to have a conversation with themselves about authenticity.
Right. And as we think about the benefits that arise from authenticity in professional relationships, the ability to speak candidly and the ability to value others and to treat others with dignity and respect, and to grow, have diverse ideas and people around you to grow inclusion. When we think about openness, how do we, it certainly seems to me that empathy would encourage the form of openness that might be required to advance as an authentic leader.
Mike, I'm loving this conversation. What we're tiptoeing around here is all a basis of trust.
Right.
And you have to have trust to do any of those things. And empathy and authenticity and integrity are all cornerstones of trust. When you have trust, you can have candid conversations. When you have trust, you can be more inclusive. When you have trust, you can continue to be more authentic, because you take away all of those fears and insecurities when you have a lack of trust.
It is sort of a set of stepping stones, isn't it? Or a staircase around trust and openness and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we think about the interactions that are created between people in pairs, so much work gets done in pairs, in two-person groups, and when we think and extend that to bigger groups and teams and divisions in organizations. So as we create this openness that empathy calls us to, what are some of the personal improvements that result from that? But I know we can't really separate the personal and professional. So I'm wondering, how do you see the benefits arise in leaders?
So if I understand your question, like, what are the personal benefits by being an empathetic leader?
Yes.
Yes. Oh boy. They are large and wide. When you show empathy, when you practice empathy, what you just said, you build more robust relationships. And the stronger your work relationships or your client relationships, right? You can get things done faster. Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust. It comes down to time and money. And empathy is the starting point of building trust. And so showing that you are aware and care is reciprocal. Now, leader, you've shown me that you're aware of my needs and that you care. I'm going to be aware of your needs too, and I'm going to care back. I'm going to give incremental effort. I'm going to be more engaged. I'm going to have more motivation to help you. My performance will improve because my mind's not elsewhere. I'm going to give you more. And likewise, once your team starts doing better, you have more confidence. You're going to give more of yourself. You're going to give more of that empathy. And it just grows and grows from there.
And that pays off enormous benefits in our personal, intimate relationships, as well as our professional relationships.
That's right. That's right.
And it's really, I think if you had a couple of key lessons to share with others on the topics of empathy, what would those key lessons be? Or key insights?
Number one, it's a hard skill. It can be learned, and it does impact the bottom line. Number two, It's a must-have skill for leaders. If you don't have it, if you are neck and neck competing with another high IQ individual for a position, it's going to go to the person who shows empathy. And by the way, when team members rate their leader as being more empathetic, when you match that up with how their performance reviews pan out with their boss, they are viewed as being more effective in their job. So it pays both ways. Your team thinks you're great and your boss thinks you're great.
Wow, that's super. And that is, again, another way to talk about alignment, a theme that I think has run through our conversation today with Ronda Robinson. And Ronda, just as we begin to wrap up and bring this awesome conversation on empathy and its relationship to authentic leadership and authenticity, how would the Authentic Change audience get in touch with you?
So there's a couple different ways. The one way to go is to practical-empathy.com. Why is there a hyphen? Because it connects the two together. Practical, empathy, connected together.
That's great. Practical-empathy.com.
Yes. You can also look for us at the Legendary Leaders Club Facebook group. It's a private community, so we can have candid conversations about what it takes to be an empathetic leader. We do offer sometimes free participation courses, etc. Or you can just email me at rhonda@legendaryleadersclub.com.
Rhonda, that is such a generous offer that you make for everyone to be in touch with you and to find you in that Facebook group at Legendary Leaders Club. Wonderful. And I've so enjoyed having you as a guest today on Authentic Change, for learning so much about the role and importance of empathy in organizations and with managers, and for the great illustrations and examples that you've provided in this edition. Rhonda, thank you so much.
Mike, thank you. This has been fantastic.
Great. And until another episode of Authentic Change, I encourage you to review our podcast, give us your honest ratings, and we'll see you at the next listen. Thank you. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll subscribe today and tell a friend about our show. If you're looking for hands-on help to increase your success through authentic change, or have a question you'd like to hear me answer here, please email me at mike@mike-horne, HORNE.com.